Hello students, today we will start section B from your main course book of unit 1. Actually, the story is a country childhood. It is not a story, it is a realistic story. It is taken from the autobiography of Nelson Mandela, and the autobiography that Nelson Mandela actually wrote, the name of his autobiography was actually A Long Walk to Freedom, that you will read in detail in class 10, about which you will read in detail in class 10 actually, but here in this publisher's book also you have to read this story taken from the autobiography of Nelson Mandela, whose name is A Long Walk to Freedom. Now this is actually an extract taken from this autobiography of Nelson Mandela. The name of the Nelson Mandela's autobiography is A Long Walk to Freedom, and this is an extract taken from this autobiography. Now you have to learn what is the meaning of the word extract. The word extract here, student, means when from a long book, from a novel, or from a long text, a short story is written based on that, or actually a part of that text is taken out and written individually. That part of the story is actually known as the extract, and a small part of a long story, in simple words, students, that is known as the extract. So this is the extract taken from the novel, taken from the autobiography of Nelson Mandela. You know what is the autobiography? Autobiography is actually the story of our life that we write ourselves, are actually known as our autobiography. So now before we start, student, let's warm up a bit. Nelson Mandela dedicated his life to South Africa's struggle for racial equality. Student, racial equality here, in South Africa, you might know that there, people of different races live there. Different races means to say that, the people with various skin colors, such as, black people, white people, brown people, the subcontinental people, all sort of, colored peoples actually live there. So there has been not traditionally, but there has been for years and years this prejudice and discrimination on the ground of race, जो भेदभाव होते हैं. So that is actually the racism. There had been a very cursed racism in South Africa for so many years, and that is why the black people there, who feel very exploited, they actually fought for the equality. As in India, you had seen in olden times there was prejudice and discrimination on the name of caste, on the ground of caste. So but now they have got the equality that they deserve. So for the equality, they also fought in South Africa for many years. White people actually did many discrimination and many sort of discrimination and prejudice among them. They showed many, the acts of inhuman act were actually done upon the black people there, while the black people was actually the original native of South Africa and African countries. So Nelson Mandela actually dedicated his whole life fighting for what? Fighting for racial equality. He wanted that everyone should be equal. There should be no discrimination and prejudice among people in the name of race. And we cannot discriminate with a people if he is black. So that is what he wanted. He wanted the equality among all the residents of the South Africa. So in doing so, he actually spent all his life. Now students, he actually spent 27 years in prison for opposing a system of segregation called apartheid. What happens here, students, that Nelson Mandela had to spend 27 years in jail and for what he has to convict in jail. He has to be convicted in jail because of opposing a system of segregation called apartheid. We will have to pronounce this. The way of correct pronunciation has been made to understand here. Apartheid. So actually there was a system in South Africa, the system of racism. That system was actually known as apartheid. And in this, to oppose this system, Nelson Mandela didn't like the system. He wanted equality, so he opposed the system. And for opposing this system, he had to spend 27 years in prison. So student, you were saying here that for doing good deeds, for doing good works, the people who do not like that, the people who were against the equality, the people who wanted the reign of white to be continued, those people actually accused him of many things and actually put him inside the jail. So you have seen with the life of Mahatma Gandhi also, and with this great person also, that though you are doing a great job, but you have to go to jail and prison in goal sometime, without doing any sin and without committed any crime also. For doing great deeds also, we will have to face some adverse circumstances and its adverse consequences. So actually, and then what happens, actually he negotiated an end to apartheid in 1990, but somehow Nelson Mandela, as he was a great person and there was so many followers, so because of all that, after all, finally he able to end this system which is known as apartheid in South Africa. And student, I forgot to tell you the meaning of segregation. Segregation means the separation. So now when did Nelson Mandela able to end this apartheid in South Africa? Actually in 1990 he was able to end this system called apartheid. And in 1994 he actually became the first ever democratically elected president of South Africa. So from this we get to know that in 1994 the first democratic election actually in South Africa took place, the first democratic election. And this democratic election was actually and he became the president, the first president of a democratic country. Before that, South Africa was not even a democratic country, and before that only white people had the rights to vote. But after 1990 when apartheid ended, and then in 1994 when the first democratic election took place in South Africa, Nelson Mandela became the first elected president of South Africa. It means by voting, through the first democratic voting in South Africa, he became the first elected president of South Africa, Nelson Mandela. As the population of black people is more there in South Africa in comparison to whites, they are many more in number. So he won the election, Nelson Mandela, his party, and he became the first elected president of South Africa. Actually what happens, student, there before the apartheid, in the era of apartheid, when there was racism in South Africa, the level of racism, to make you understand, let me tell you something. In those and in that era, in apartheid era, South Africa was separated and segregated from all over the world. After 1965, all the countries of the world actually isolated the South Africa from the international group, from the as a country of international international society, because other countries believe that there is so much prejudice in South Africa, so we will not do anything with South Africa until they end apartheid in their countries. As such, South Africa was isolated from all the things. South Africa could not participate in Olympic Games. They could not play football, cricket, or any sports at international level in that era from 1965 to to 1990 till when apartheid end, because they wanted the apartheid to end in South Africa. So every country actually started to deprive, every country was actually started to avoid and boycott South Africa from everything, and that is why South Africa had to ultimately end this apartheid system, and then they were included again in every international system. So now actually you saw that in 1994 the first democratic election took place in South Africa, and Nelson Mandela became the first president of South Africa, one of the most famous and deeply loved leaders in the world. And he is, Nelson Mandela, as students, was actually one of the most famous and deeply loved leaders, as you also would have heard that he is considered among in the level of Mahatma Gandhi. He is an international leader. He is internationally known like APJ Abdul Kalam, and he is one of the most famous personalities in the world. And finally, Mandela actually passed away on 5th December 2013 in Johannesburg. Johannesburg is actually a city in South Africa. So student, as we are reading about South Africa and Nelson Mandela, I would like to share a thing that, as I told you, that in apartheid era South Africa was separated, South Africa was isolated by the international community. So when they returned to international community, when the apartheid end in South Africa, India has a connection with that. So I like to tell you about that. Actually, till 1965 till 1990, the international community isolated South Africa from everything. They could not even participate in a sports activity. So actually in 1965 South Africa was isolated from cricket also. ICC excluded this country, South Africa, from because due to apartheid system in their country. So in 1990 it was actually BCCI, the cricket control board of India actually took board of cricket control for cricket in India actually took the step and tried to make the South Africa reappear in cricket world, and India became the first country after the apartheid end in South Africa to travel South Africa for playing a cricket series. So actually this was a thing that I would like to share with you. Now student, we will come to the extract that was taken from the Nelson Mandela's autobiography. We will read this. We will start this tomorrow. This is just one page, so it is not a very long thing. So students, for today that's it. We will start again tomorrow.